Hey there! Welcome to From Inside My Book Fort. Today I'm going to read a passage from Louise Penny's Glass Houses. Well, said Clara, what do you think? In the wake of the attacks, she'd canceled her art show. The vernissage would have been that very day at the museum in Montreal, but instead she'd hung her latest works in the bistro. Certainly covers up the holes, said Gabby. It was the best that could be said of the paintings. They couldn't cover all the huge pockmarks in the plaster walls, but the worst were now hidden by these strange portraits. Gabby was not completely convinced that it was an improvement. The debris had been cleaned up, the shattered glass and wood and broken furniture thrown into bins. The injured were healing. Olivier stood beside him, his arm bandaged and in a sling. The insurance people had been and gone, and been again, and gone again, and were returning. They could not quite believe the claim that said the damages came from automatic weapons fire, until they saw, and still they needed to return. And yet there it was, holes blasted in the walls, the old bay windows shattered, a makeshift replacement put in by a local contractor. People from surrounding villages had come to help, and now, if you didn't look too closely, the bistro was almost back to normal. Ruth was standing in front of a painting of Jonquet. There was a light, airy quality about it, probably because the canvas wasn't obscured by a lot of paint. In fact, there was very little. "He's undressed," said Ruth. "Disgusting." This was not completely true. What body there was had clothes, but it was really more a suggestion of a body, a suggestion of clothing. His handsome face was detailed, but older than the man himself. Clara had painted Jonquet as he might look in 30 years. There was peace in the face and something else deep in his eyes. They walked around, drinks in hand, staring at the walls, staring at themselves. Over the course of a year, Clara had painted all of them, or most of them. Myrna, Olivier, Sarah the baker, Jonquet, Leo, and Gracie. She'd even painted herself in the long-awaited self-portrait. It looked like a middle-aged madwoman staring into a mirror, holding a paintbrush, trying to do a self-portrait. Gabby had hung that one near the toilets. "But there are no holes there," Claire had pointed out. "And isn't that lucky?" said Gabby, hurrying away. Claire smiled and followed him into the body of the bistro, taking up a position at the bar and sipping a cool sangria. She watched and wondered when they'd get it, when they'd see that the unfinished portraits were in fact finished. They were not perhaps finished in the conventional sense, but she had captured in each the thing she most wanted. And then she'd stopped. If Jonquet's clothes weren't perfect, did it matter? If Myrna's hands were blurry, who cared? If Olivier's hair was more suggestion than actual hair, what difference did it make? And his hair, as Gabby was always happy to point out, was becoming more of a suggestion every day. Ruth was staring at the portrait of Rosa, even as she held the duck. The Rosa in Clara's painting was imperious, officious. Had Napoleon been a canard, he would have been Rosa. Clara had pretty much nailed her. Ruth gave a small snort. Then she shuffled along to the next painting of Olivier, then the next, and the next. By the time she'd done the circuit, everyone was watching her, waiting for the explosion. Instead, she went up to Clara, kissed her on the cheek, went back to the painting of Rosa, and stood there for a very long time. The friends stared at each other, then one by one they joined Ruth. Marie was the next to see it. Then she went to the next painting, following Ruth's tour of the room, going from one canvas to the next. Then Myrna got it, and she too followed around the bistro. Then Olivier saw it. Deep in Rosa's haughty eyes there was another tiny, perfect, finished portrait of Ruth. She was leaning towards Rosa, offering the nest of old flannel sheets, offering a home. It was a portrait of adoration, of salvation, of intimacy. It was a moment so tender, so vulnerable. Myrna, Marie, Olivier felt like voyeurs, looking into a glass home. But they didn't feel dirty. They felt lucky to see such love. They went from painting to painting. There, in each of their eyes, a loved one was perfectly reflected. Myrna turned to Clara across the room, across the shattered, broken bistro, across the lifetimes of friendship. Clara, who knew that bodies might come and go, but love was eternal.